Nestor Gomez was born in Guatemala and came to Chicago undocumented in the mid-80s. He told his first story at the Moth Story Slam to get over the stuttering that plagued his childhood. Since then, he has won nearly 60 Moth Slams and several Grand Slams. Nestor hosts and produces his own storytelling show, which is now available as a podcast, 80 Minutes Around the World, a show that features the stories of immigrants and refugees from different parts of the world, their descendants, and allies. Recently, Nestor has also published his first collection of stories from his days as a driver for ride sharing titled, Your Driver Has Arrived. To listen and subscribe to the podcast, buy Nestor's book, and visit his website to more learn about him. I'll leave the link in the chat.
Hello. Okay. How's everybody doing today? I'm gonna have to apologize first of all if you hear any noises on the background. I don't understand. There's a lot of people screaming and cars are coming by honking, and a lot of people are like screaming outside. I don't know what happened, but something happened that a lot of people are celebrating. So, uh, yeah, we had some good news going on right now. So I'm really excited about that, and I guess a lot of people are excited as well. So you might hear a few noises. Let me start by just giving you a little introduction about myself. Because you're probably thinking like, who's this old guy talking to me right now? And I never saw him before. Well, I'm a storyteller. You're probably thinking, what the is a storyteller? A storyteller, uh, at least on the way that I do it, is a person that goes up in front of an audience now on a virtual stage as well, and tells a story related to his or her life. And you're probably thinking, why would I go up and want to tell a story about my life to a bunch of strangers and say something embarrassing about myself? Well, in my case, it's because I came to this country undocumented and I couldn't speak English and I used to stutter when I was a kid. And it took me a long time to find my voice. And now that I have found my voice, I want to be able to let other people know about the realities of the immigration experience. The immigrant community is often seen as a bad community, that we come to this country to create trouble, to be criminals, to not pay taxes, and blah, 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 blah. And a lot of other communities have the same problem. We had the same problem with the African American community, where the African American community is being demonized and criminalized a lot. The LGTB community. So when we tell our stories, what we try to do is we try to let people know the reality of our lives, of our experiences, so people can understand a little bit better about our realities. And by telling our stories, I don't try to tell people, see, what you're thinking is wrong, or this is the way you should think. I just tell you what I have experienced so you could understand a little bit better where I'm coming from. I'm hoping that we could build a bridge and get connected. So let me tell you a story, so you could draw your own conclusions about storytelling and either something you like or you don't like. Hopefully, you will like the story. My parents came to Chicago around the 1980s, at the beginning of the 1980s, and left me and my siblings in Guatemala in the care of our grandparents and uncles. For years, we didn't see our parents until we were reunited here in Chicago. Since then, because of the time that we spent away, my mother likes to make celebrations every season, every possible time. She likes to celebrate and bring the family together. And the way that she celebrates is by making barbecue. In the summer, especially barbecues. Oh, she makes some amazing tacos. Sadly, this year, although I was looking forward to the barbecues and the gatherings and the summertime, sadly, this year, coronavirus hit the nation and all celebrations and gatherings were put on pause. I couldn't go see my mother, but at least I could call her. So I called my mom. I make some food for you, my mother said as soon as she answered the phone. I know I'm a 40-year-old, 40 plus something year old man, but my mother still cooks meals for me. She shows her love to me by making food for me. And I show my love for her by eating her food. But I couldn't go see my mom because of COVID. So I told my mom, although I want to go see you and pick up some food, the government has advised that due to the severity of coronavirus and the possibility of infection, young people like myself should stay away from all people like you. My mother laughed as soon as she heard this. You see, comic relief is often a way for communities at risk to survive. And since we are a poor immigrant family, we often make jokes among our miseries and problems. Sadly, not everything has been fun and games. The time that me and my siblings spent away from my mother, not being able to see her, not being able to talk to her, not being able to hug her or kiss her, were extremely sad. It has been a long time since anything separated our families in such a way. Sadly, that this coronavirus epidemic is causing similar damage to our family. Well, you don't want to come to my house to eat some of my food. I'm going to your house to drop it off, my mom says. And then she hangs up the phone. Before I can tell my mom, Mom, you're crazy. Why are you driving all the way here? It's dangerous. You shouldn't be going out. She hangs up the phone. I can't say anything. A few minutes later, I see a car, and it's my mom. She's carrying two huge plastic bags full of Tupperware. She drops the bags in front of my door and steps back as I open the door. I can see my mom smiling, or at least I think that she's smiling. I can't really see her mouth because of the face mask that she's wearing, but I think that she's smiling because I can see her eyes and they are shining in spite of the two tears that are rolling down her face. I want to hug her so badly, but I know I can't, so I don't. I remember the last time that I felt this crazy need to hug my mother. Me and my siblings had just arrived to Chicago, and we were standing on the hallway of my mother's building. The coyote was knocking on my mother's door, and as my mother opened her door, me, my sister, and my middle brother, we ran to my mother's side and we clung to her body. My 5-year-old brother stood by the side, not knowing what to do. After a few minutes, my little brother finally said, I'm hungry. Here, eat these cookies, my mother said. Gracias, señora, my brother responded. Don't call me señora. Don't call me lady. My mom said, I'm your mom. Call me mom. I'm your mom. My mother didn't recognize, my brother didn't recognize my mother anymore because we have been away for so long. I understood my brother that day. We were separated from our parents for so long that it took a while for us to start feeling like a family again. Today, I recognize my mom in spite of the mask that she's wearing. She is no longer the young lady that came to this country in search of a better life for her family, nor the strange lady that opened the door to her apartment. Now she's an old woman, and all the hard years of working her ass off to provide for me and my siblings are beginning to show on her body. I want to hug her so badly. Mom, I want to hug you so badly, I tell her. Me too, she replies. She gets close to me and she extends her elbow. And I extend my elbow on the same way, and we bump elbows with this strange COVID-19 salutation that we all have been forced to use. My mother gets in her car. Make sure that you eat all the food, my mother says. I wish that we could eat this meal together, I tell my mom. Don't worry, my mom says. Soon we are going to be together again. I hear that, and I swear to you that those were the same words that my mother said to me and my siblings as she left for Chicago and left us in Guatemala. It was years before we could see our mother again. But in the end, we were able to be reunited. I know, I know that we are going to beat this pandemic. And I know that eventually we are going to be reunited again. And when that happens, I'm going to run to my mother's side. And I'm going to give her the longest, biggest, loving hug ever. And then I'm going to say, how about some tacos, Mom? Thank you. So, as you can see, this is a story about immigration. It's a story about immigrant. It's a story about COVID-19, but it's also a story about families. It's a story about the love between families, the love between a mother and a son, the love between siblings, the love of the family love, the need for family to be together. And that story, although it's a story of my life, that probably most of you have never experienced that 100%, you do have experienced separation from the people that you love. Especially now with COVID, we all have been separated from the people that we love. And we all can understand a little bit better how immigrants are forced to be separated from their loved ones. What I try to do with my stories is explain the immigration story on a way that other people can relate to. And a story, when you find that little piece of magic that helps you bring your story to another level, the story to a way that other people can understand it and relate to it, that makes the story more special. That makes the audience to be able to understand the story better, and to be able to connect with the story. Like I say, I don't preach. I don't try to tell people which is the way or the wrong way to live. I just tell you my experience, and I hope that you can learn something from it and that you can connect to that experience. I don't know. You want to open it up and to have people ask me questions about this story, or do you want me to continue to just tell another story?
I mean, I would love to hear another story, but if anyone has questions, feel free.
I just ask because I know that we don't have a lot of time, and the stories are usually like 6 minutes, so we do have time for another story. Okay, another story. How about an election story? Yeah. um, yeah. When I was a 15-year-old kid in Guatemala, I was looking forward to the time where I could turn 18, because in Latin American countries, you can smoke, you can drink, and you can drive. And of course, I wanted to be able to do all those things legally. Who wouldn't? But there was one more thing that I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to vote. You see, when I was 15 years old, I used to stutter really badly. I couldn't put a couple of words together to form a sentence because of my stuttering. So the idea of having a voice with my vote and help stop the civil war that was taking place in Guatemala and had cost the life of thousands of people, and also have forced many parents, like my own parents, to emigrate to the United States and leave their kids behind, was intoxicating to me. I wanted to have a voice. I wanted to be able to vote. But a couple of months after I turned 15, my parents decided that it was better for me and my siblings to come to the United States and be reunited with them. So that's what we did. Now, when I came to the United States, although everything was different, I was also excited because I learned that in this country, you can also vote when you turn 18. However, me and my siblings had come to this country undocumented. And unlike what you hear on some people Twitter account, undocumented people do not vote. Why would people that don't have any documents and are hiding from the authorities go to a place where the first thing that they ask you is for your documents. It makes no sense. So undocumented people do not vote. So I was really sad when I learned that I wasn't going to be able to vote. I remember thinking, now I really don't have a voice. Not only do I stutter, but I also don't know the language of this country. And even after I turn 18, I will not be able to vote. I don't have a voice. My mother heard about my worries and she told me, Mijo, don't worry, son, don't worry about it. Because I have a green card and I have applied for you guys to become citizens of the United States. The only thing you have to do, she said, is you have to remain single. But at 15 years old, I started going to high school. And you know how it's in high school, you meet people, you start hooking up. Next thing you're in love. Well, even me with my stuttering, I managed to find somebody. And a couple of years later, I kind of got my girlfriend pregnant. So we kind of had to get married. So I didn't listen to my mom. My siblings listened to my mom. They remained single and they got the papers, but I continued to be undocumented. A few years down the line, I got divorced to my high school sweetheart. And then I met somebody else and I got married again. And then just down the line, I got divorced, which only complicated and delayed my immigration status and my immigration procedures. But if you think about it, getting married and getting divorced and getting married and getting divorced and getting married and getting divorced, it's kind of like the American way of life. I should have been giving my citizenship just for getting divorced so many times. But the government didn't see it that way. And I had to wait to get my papers fixed. It wasn't until the time when Barack Obama was running to become president of the United States that I finally got a green card. But having a green card is not the same thing than being a USA citizen. When you have a green card, you still cannot vote. And I remember thinking, I'm no longer undocumented because I have a green card. I no longer stutter because I'm getting over my fear of public speaking and getting over my fear of talking. I no longer stutter. And I have managed to speak English with a very sexy Latino accent, but I still cannot vote. I still don't have a voice. When Barack Obama was elected president, thousands of people gathered at Grand Park to celebrate. Families went to restaurants, people went to bars, people were driving around, honking their cars and screaming, yes, we can, yes, we can, yes, we can. I couldn't vote. I was at home upset. Not upset that Obama had been elected, but upset that I was not able to vote. I wanted to be a part of that historical movement that gave us the first African American president, the first Black president in the history of the United States. So I promised myself that I was going to make everything in my power to become a citizen as soon as possible. So by the time Obama was running for his second term, I still wasn't a citizen because I had gotten lazy and complacent. Obama is going to win with or without my help. It takes too long to become a citizen. It costs too much money. I had to take a test. I had to pay fines. It's just not worth it. So I did not become a citizen on time to vote for a second Obama term. It wasn't until the end of Obama's second term when the chants of build the wall started to get really loud that I decided to get my act together and become a citizen. But to become a citizen from having a green card takes a lot of time. You had to fill up applications, you had to take a test, you had to do a lot of things. So I did not have time to vote for the 2016 election. This time I was watching the results at home and I was really sad and I was really mad. I remember thinking, how many people like me had a green card and waited too long to become citizens and couldn't vote? And how many people were citizens and simply decided they just didn't have time. It wasn't important for them to vote. Black people were lynched, were killed, were persecuted just for the right to vote, to keep them from voting. Native Americans and women were only allowed to vote a few decades ago. There are thousands of people at detention centers in jail that are fighting for the right to vote. There should be no reason whatsoever why we don't go out and vote. I mean, this was one of the most important elections of our time, and half of the population of the United States simply did not go out and vote. I wasn't able to become a citizen until about 2 years after the 2016 elections. More than 30 years after I had come to this country, I finally became a USA citizen. And the first thing I did was to call my mom and say, "Hey, mom, thank you so much for helping me all these years. I'm sorry that I messed it up, but I'm finally a citizen." And then I signed up to become a registered voter. And when I was signing up as a registered voter, I was telling the guy there, like, I was so excited because I was going to be able to vote on the first presidential election. And he's like, "You don't have to wait until then. There are elections for mayor, for alderman. There are plenty of elections that you could take part of." So a few months later, I was on my way to vote for the very first time in my life. I was no longer the 15-year-old kid that wanted to vote. I was an old 40-something-year-old man on his way to vote for the first time. I remember going to the place, getting my ballot, and looking at it for a long time, and almost crying as I placed my vote for the first time ever. On my way out of the building, I asked somebody, they had a napkin, and the guy looked at me like, "What's wrong with you, dude?" So I had to explain myself. It's the first time I'm voting. I just can't help it, but I'm crying a little bit. And the guy said, "You know what? In that case, this is very important for you. You don't want to forget this." And he gave me a wristband with the words, "I voted" on it. I looked at the wristband and I took off running because I didn't want to start crying like a little baby. I went outside and I took pictures of my wristband and I posted them on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, on MySpace, everywhere that I could post them on social media. And then when I got home, my wife asked me, well, of course, my wife, because I got married a third time, what can you do with this sexy Latino accent? So I got home and my wife asked me, "How long did it take? How you feel?" And I wanted to tell her that from the moment that I walked into the building to the time that I vote, it only took me 5, 10 minutes. But to be allowed to vote, it took me a lifetime. But my wife knows that. So instead, I just say, "I feel great. I have a voice now." Thank you. All right. How are we doing on time? We got about 20 minutes. You want to hear a short story, a little tiny short story, maybe like a 2-minute story, before we can open up for questions? This is part of a longer story, but I usually do this 2-minute story when I'm running out of time. So I hope that you like it. I entered the room where the nurses kept the babies, looking for my newborn son. The first baby that I saw as I entered the room was an ugly looking baby. His, his face was all wrinkled up like an old man. He had facial hair all over like a little werewolf. His ears were all wrinkled up. And every time that he breathed, he made this horrible noise, which made him look even uglier. I felt sorry for where the parents of the ugly looking baby. I covered him up with a blanket so people wouldn't see him so much and be scared. And I went into the room looking for my baby. I saw a beautiful baby that had blue eyes and blonde hair, but I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's my baby. I saw another beautiful baby. I'm like, yeah, that's too big. It's almost as big as me because I'm short. I'm 5 feet tall. I'm like, that baby's almost as big as me. That cannot be my baby. I saw a couple of more beautiful babies, and I'm like, which one is mine? Which one is mine? Which one's the cutest? That one has to be my baby because I'm cute. My baby has to be the cutest one. I was looking at all the babies when suddenly I heard a voice at the entrance of the room. Mi nieto! My grandson! It was my mom looking at the ugly looking baby. Why do you think that that monster, horrible looking baby is my baby? I told my mother. She looked up, looked at me and say, Menso, dumbass, he looked just like you when you were born. Thank you.
Okay, Nestor. So we have this scheduled until 1:15. So if you have another story, you don't have to rush.
Okay. I got plenty of stories. Ha. You're having a problem with shut me. You could have a problem with shut me down. Now we're letting me talk. After spending 30 years not being able to talk because of my stutter, it was like, it's like, oh, it's like when you're looking for a washroom and you finally found one, you're like, ah. So that's how I feel when I'm in the mic. It's like, yes, let me be. Okay, I know this. Okay, about some years ago, I was going to a Guatemalan bakery because I had this custom to stop by the Guatemalan bakery to buy some bread, some Guatemalan bread before I went to see my mom, so we could have kind of like a Guatemalan breakfast together. So I walk into the Guatemalan bakery, and I cannot believe what I see. Is that for real? I tell the lady behind the counter. She looks down. She looks back and she's like, yeah, that's for real. We have pollo campero here. This was before they opened a pollo campero here in Chicago, so there was no pollo campero. I have been in Chicago for about 20 something years, and I had not had pollo campero. And I know right now you're thinking like, what is pollo campero? Well, pollo campero is country chicken. That's what it translates to. But pollo campero is a famous Guatemalan uh, fast food place restaurant that specializes on making fried chicken. Think about not having fried chicken for a long time. Well, this is how I felt when I saw the sign for pollo campero. I'm like, that is amazing. So I told the lady, how much for two pieces? Because I thought maybe I could buy one and take one for my mom. And she's like, $50. Now, at this time, I was making like $5 an hour. So the idea of buying two pieces of chicken that cost $50 was crazy. So I thought about it. I'm like, how about for one piece? How much for one piece? It's $30. And I thought, well, that's just too expensive. I cannot pay for it. That is expensive. But then I figured, okay, maybe I could just buy one for me and just keep it a secret. Don't tell my mom because it's too expensive. At least I get one for me. So I told the lady, can I have one piece? And she's like, oh, we don't have any right now. We had to order it from New York. And when my husband goes to New York, then he brings it back. And he's not going to New York until the end of the month. You place your order now, and by the end of the month, you come and pick it up. So I thought about it. By the end of the month, it's going to be my mom's birthday. I could buy some pollo campero, two pieces, and have one piece for myself and one piece for my mom. I mean, I know fried chicken doesn't seem like the best birthday present, but this is pollo campero. Just eating it brings so many memories. We have been in the United States for 20 something. I have been here for 20 something years at that time. My mom had been here longer. And if I had memories of Pollo Campero, Guatemala, my mom had many more memories. This was going to make her day. So I say, fine. And I went home happy, even though I had to wait about 3 weeks for my chicken to be delivered. I kept looking at the calendar, and when the day to pick up my chicken came, I was so excited. And I know it's crazy because sometimes we go to the drive-thru at a Popeyes or a Kentucky Fried Chicken, and we're mad when it takes longer than 10 minutes. I waited 3 weeks for my order of chicken to be arrived, and I was happy when I went to the place to pick it up. I went to the place, and they gave me the chicken, and I took it, and it was frozen, cold frozen. So that this is cold. This is frozen. And she's like, how do you expect that we keep the chicken fresh from New York to Chicago and then have to call people, and sometimes people take 3-4 days to pick it up? Just put it on the microwave for a couple of minutes. It will be just fine when you eat it. So I'm like, fine, fine. I already paid $50 anyway, so fine. So I went to my mom's house and I knocked on the door. And my niece, who lived with my mom at the time, opened the door. She was a teenager. So of course, as soon as she saw me, she's like, oh, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "I get to see my mom. I didn't get to see you." She's like, "Whatever." And she goes into her room. And I go into the kitchen to see my mom. And I tell my mom, "Close your eyes because I have a surprise for you." My mom closes her eyes. I open her microwave. I put the chicken in the microwave, and the chicken starts heating up. When the chicken is ready, ping, my niece comes out of her room. "Is that chicken?" Because of course, teenagers are available when there's chicken, when there's food available. She comes out, she looks at the chicken, and she takes one piece. I'm like, "No way! That's my chicken." And then she takes ketchup and start putting ketchup on the chicken. I go like, "No, no, 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 no. You don't put ketchup on pollo campero. I'm sorry, but that's like a sin." And my niece is like, "Why you don't put this chicken? Why you don't put ketchup on chicken?" And I say, "Because this is special chicken." What is so special about it? It's made with special herbs, with a special secret recipe. Oh, like Kentucky Fried Chicken, she say, and then she bites into it. And before I know, she's eating almost the whole piece of chicken. And then I look at my mom, and my mom is starting to eat her chicken. She's like really happy. So I tell my mom, "Can you give me one tiny piece of chicken?" And she cuts a little piece of chicken, and I put the $50 piece of chicken in my mouth. And immediately it brought me so many memories. But it also made me realize that my niece was born in this country. And although we taught her the traditions of Guatemala and we explained her that we're from Guatemala and we taught her how to speak Spanish, and she knows that she's descendant from Latinos, she has her own experience, her own memories. And I cannot change them. I just have to be happy and grateful on my own memories, on my mother's memories, and the fact that we are creating new memories together, even if they are a $50 piece of chicken that had a little bit of ketchup on. Thank you. All right. How about another story about food? Because now I'm feeling hungry with all these food stories about food. Um, so I came to the United States in the mid '80s, and I was undocumented. And for a long time, I couldn't go back to Guatemala. For the first 15 years that I lived here, I couldn't go back to Guatemala because I wasn't documented. I didn't have papers. No tenía papeles, like we say. I didn't have papers to go back. And even after I got my green card, I didn't have papers because I didn't have money. You can't go anywhere without money. I was broke. And it took me a long time to put enough money together that I could take a vacation and I could pay for my travel to Guatemala. It wasn't until about 2 years ago, after more than 30 years from the day that I first left Guatemala, that I was able to take a plane with my wife and go and spend our honeymoon in Guatemala. Now, I cannot describe to you how excited I was on the plane and how happy I was the moment that I landed in Guatemala. I haven't been there for 30 years. And one thing struck me at first. It was for the first time in my life, I was in a room with a bunch of short people like me. I no longer had to look up everywhere that I went. And everywhere that I went, I heard people speaking Spanish the way that I speak Spanish, like a Guatemala, mucha, puchica, all those Guatemalan words that I haven't heard in so many years. I was so happy. But there was one thing that I wanted to do, especially. I wanted to eat some rellenitos. Now, rellenitos, let me explain you what rellenitos are. Rellenitos are plantains that have been refried. And in the middle of the plantains, you put black beans that have been refried with sugar. Then you close up the plantain with the beans in the middle, and you fry the plantain a little bit more and you add sugar on it. And then you top that with sour cream. And guess what you put on the sour cream? Yeah, sugar. So yes, it's really sweet. It's really delicious. And I had rellenitos here in Chicago, but I wanted to have rellenitos in Guatemala. So I told my wife, we are going to a bunch of places, but we're going to look for rellenitos. The first day, I didn't find any rellenitos, but I found atol de lote. Now, atol de lote is this drink that is made from corn. It's basically corn syrup. And my family was poor, and we only had corn syrup. Atol de lote, this corn syrup, whenever we went to school on Sundays. We went to church on Sundays. I hated going to church on Sundays. The only reason that I went to church is because after church, we could have atol de lote. So I told you I told the lote, and I'm like, I bought a big cup, and I bought a cup for my wife, and I explained her like, when I was like a little kid, we used to go to church, and I only went to church because I started crying as I'm drinking the atol de lote. And my wife, he looked at me like, okay, calm down, it's gonna be okay. The next day, we're looking for the rellenitos. We don't find rellenitos, but we found tortillas. And I know you're like, dude, there's tortillas are used. You can buy a package of tortillas are used. Yeah, but it's not the same thing than buying a package of tortillas, putting it on a microwave, 5 minutes, than seeing somebody grabbing the dog, putting it on their hands. They even make music while they're making the tortilla by hand, and then they put it on the hot comal, and you take it out, and you put salt on it, and you wrap it up like a little taco, and you eat it. So we did that, and I'm eating fresh tortillas, fresh made tortillas, right off that comale. And I'm telling my wife, when I was a kid, so then we were so poor, we didn't have anything to eat. The only thing we had was tortillas with salt. And we were not having, like, now I'm here. I came from Chicago. I got money dollars. And my wife was like, okay, it's okay. It's okay, relax. It's okay. We spent a couple of days in Guatemala, and every time that I bought something to eat, I'm like crying, and my wife was like, oh, God, stop crying. Please stop crying. But we did not find any rellenitos. Sometimes we got to a restaurant and they had just run out of rellenitos. Sometimes we got to a restaurant and they only sold them in the afternoon. Other times we got to a restaurant, they only sold them in the evenings. For one reason or another, we couldn't find rellenitos. So my wife told me on a last day in Guatemala, as we are packing our stuff to go to the airport, she said, like, I'm sorry that we didn't find any rellenitos like you wanted. Now, I already told you what rellenitos are. But rellenitos also means in Spanish something tiny that is really full. So I told my wife, don't worry, because I'm sure, and I'm really full because I ate so much the last couple of days that I'm basically a rellenito myself. So don't worry about it. We go to the airport, and my wife likes to be at the airport early, so we get there like 4 hours early. And we're walking around the airport, just making time. And there's a restaurant there, so I go and look at the restaurant, and immediately somebody comes out and like, sir, would you like to have a table? Would you like to sit down? Because over there, they like really grab you for your business. I'm like, no. I already saw your menu, and you don't have what I want. And I tell him this because I don't want to be bothered. I'm just waiting for the time for my plane to take off. And the guy asked me like, what is it that you're looking for? I said, sir. And I say, rellenitos. And the guy looks at me and says, wait for me 1 minute. He runs into the kitchen. 5 minutes later, he come back with the chef. And the chef asked me, what are you looking for, sir? And I said, we're looking for rellenitos. And the chef says, well, we don't have it on our menu, but if you give me about 20 minutes, we could make some rellenitos for you. God almighty, I have 4 hours to kill. I can wait 20 minutes. I can wait 2 hours for some rellenitos. I'm like, hell yeah. We sit down, and they bring me some coffee, and I'm waiting for my rellenitos. I'm really excited. And my wife is like, I cannot believe they're going to make some rellenitos specially for you. I'm like, hey, I'm in my country. We are VIP. We are here. I'm waiting for my rellenitos. 5 minutes later, the chef comes, and he's bringing the rellenitos. And he placed the rellenitos in my, a plate of rellenitos by my wife, and he placed a plate of rellenitos by me. And I don't know if you've seen the movie Ratatouille, when the guy when the food critic gets this food that reminds him of when he was a little kid, and in his mind he like becomes a little kid, and he sees his mom and he's in the kitchen. That's exactly how I felt. After 30 years, I'm back in my country, surrounded by people that speak my language, and I feel like the little kid that used to come home and have rellenitos in the kitchen. And I'm starting to eat the rellenitos, and my wife is like, please don't start crying. And I'm like, I can't believe we having rellenitos. I thought we were gonna go home with no rellenitos. And the chef went give me rellenitos. And I'm eating the rellenitos. And I'm crying so much that I cannot even eat the rellenitos. So I told my wife, you know what? I'm gonna go to the washroom so I could control myself. I get up and I start walking to the washroom, but I see that door to the kitchen. So instead, I go into the kitchen because I want to thank the chef for what he did. And I go into the kitchen. I'm still crying. I go like, "Where's the chef? I want to talk to the chef. Where's the chef?" And then the chef sees me and he's like, "What's going on?" And he's like, "I'm just going to tell you that I'm really glad that you eat the we also get you to eat the I know. And then it hit me. I'm in Guatemala. Our countries are very machistas. A man is not supposed to cry. And I'm here, standing in the middle of a kitchen, crying my eyes out. All these guys are gonna make fun of me. All these guys are gonna treat me the wrong way. But I don't care. I just can't stop crying. Suddenly the chef comes to me and he puts his hand in my shoulder and say, hey, hey, it's okay. Welcome home, brother. Thank you.
That was beautiful. Oh my God. And we have 16 minutes left, so feel free to tell another one.
All right. Let me see. Ooh. I had to be, okay. I got one more. Um, so after I came to Chicago, it took me a while after I came to Chicago when I was a kid. It took me a while to get used to the traditions here in the United States because they are a little bit different than they are in Guatemala. For example, Christmas. Here, people open the presents on Christmas morning. In Latin American countries like Guatemala, we open our presents on Christmas at midnight. So when people here are opening their presents to see what they got, we are already at the store exchanging our presents or getting our money back if we didn't like what we got. People here celebrate Easter, which is a bunny that puts eggs that has chocolate inside. I still don't understand it. How does that work? I still don't understand it. But the one tradition that scared me the more that I didn't understand was the day when people go out with masks and disguises to get candies, Halloween. And the reason why I couldn't understand it is because in Guatemala, whenever you saw somebody with a mask, it's because you were going to be robbed, you were going to get killed or kidnapped. And then here, people were all over the place, running around with masks, asking for candies. It took me a while to get used to that idea. In fact, it took me so long to get used to that it wasn't until a few years ago that I decided that I was going to dress up for the first time ever for Halloween. But there were two problems. One is that I'm very cheap. I don't like to spend money. And two, I was broke. So even if I had money, I couldn't spend any money. But I wanted to disguise myself. So I only had one choice. I had to hit the thrift store to get the stuff that I wanted. So I drove to the thrift stores and I went to several thrift stores looking for the stuff that I wanted. I wanted some white high Converse. I wanted some black pants, a black jacket, and a white t-shirt with black stripes going around it. A white t-shirt with black stripes going around it. And a little French hat. I got everything that I wanted and I put my costume together and I realized it had cost me $20. To me, this was a lot of money. I'm thinking I'm $20 down. I had to make this money up. So I remember there's a nightclub and they having a Halloween costume competition. I could go to that nightclub, and if I win, I could earn my money back. So I go to the nightclub. I paid the $10 to get in. Now I'm $30 down, and I paid the $10 to get in. And I'm walking around. And 5 minutes later, they start calling people that have costumes to the stage. And the ace and the MC is telling people, here we have Superman, a round of applause for Superman. We have Spider-Man, a round of applause for Spider-Man. Here we have the Joker, a round of applause. Here we have. He says he stops when he sees me, and he's like, who are you supposed to be? I know. He says, you are a mime. One of those people that are stuck on a box. I'm like, no, I'm not a mime. If I was a mime, I wouldn't be talking. I say. So who are you supposed to be? He says. And Chompidas, I say, excited. And he looked at me the same way that a couple of you are looking at me right now, like, who's Chompidas? I never heard about Chompidas. Well, you see, Chompidas is a character from Chespirito, a Mexican comedian who was extremely famous all over Latin America. People from Mexico to Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama, Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Peru, everyone in Central America and South America grew up watching Chespirito. In fact, Chespirito was so famous that moms knew they wouldn't they not to make dinner around Chespirito time because kids would not come to the table. Chespirito had so many characters that Charlie Chaplin was the one that gave him the name Chespirito because he said he is such a talented comedian that he's like a little Shakespeare, Chespirito. That's how good he was. He was one of the most famous Mexican comedians ever. So I was dressing as Chompidas, one of the characters. But the nightclub that I went to was in downtown Chicago, and nobody knew who Chompidas was. So believe it or not, I did not win any money. So I got home and I'm thinking, oh man, now I spent $20 on my costume and $10 on the nightclub. Now I'm $30 down. I had to make the money up. And then I remember the next night there was going to be another contest at another club. So I decided to go. I drove there the next night. I parked in the parking lot. I started to walk to the entrance, and a security guard stopped me. Sir, you cannot come into this establishment wearing a hat. And I look at him. Well, this hat is part of the costume. Sir, you cannot come into this establishment with a hat. I say, but this is part of the costume. I was arguing with him when another security guard came. He saw me and he's like, let him come in. That the hat is part of the costume. I look at the guy and say, like, you know who I'm supposed to be? And he's like, go in. Just go in. I went in, and then I realized why he had said that. They were playing salsa. They were playing cha-cha. They were playing bachata. They were playing cumbia. It was Latino night at the club. And as soon as I went in, everybody like, Chompiras, Chompiras. Everybody knew who I was. Ladies wanted to take my picture. Guys wanted to have a drink with me. Everybody knew who I was. When the time came around for the contest, the MC started to call people. Here we have Superman. Here we have Spider-Man. Here we have Mario. Here we have Chompiras, he said. And the crowd started to applaud. They choose 3 people to go to the final. I was one of those people.
We have 10 minutes.
Oh, I think there's 2 minutes left. There's they called me back into the stage. And this time a friend of mine came into the stage with me, and he did one thing that Chompiras always did on his television show. He took out my hat, he combed my hair, and he slapped me. And I threw myself on the floor. And the whole crowd went crazy. The DJ started to play a song, which was the theme music of the show. And everybody started dancing and going, Chompiras, Chompiras, Chompiras. I won $300 that night. And all of you also won today. And you are like, oh, we're going to get money. No, I'm sorry, you're not going to get money. But you won because you got knowledge. You didn't know, or some of you didn't know who Chompiras was before you heard my story. And also, you learn something else. You learn that when people say that immigrants come to this country to force our language and traditions on you, it's not true. We come to this country and we learn your traditions and we put our own spices on them. We make them a little bit better. We make them a little bit ours. And isn't that exactly that? The contributions from immigrants from all over the world that have truly made this country great. Thank you.
Okay, guys, so we have 10 minutes left, well, a little less than 10 minutes. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or unmute yourself.
I just wanted to say I really enjoyed your stories. They were wonderful and very interesting.
Thank you so much. There's a bunch of videos on my website. Uh, you could watch them for free. They have like 50 different stories in there that you could watch. So
Was the hardest part about coming to America, or about your mother coming to America, um, your mom leaving, or were there any other challenges?
yeah, being separated from my mom was like the hardest thing ever. It was some years, but they were like really, really, really bad years. Yes, when kids were being separated at the border, I remember watching the news and just like crying watching the news because I was like, that could have been me. That could have been me thrown in a little cage. So that could have been my kids thrown in a little cage. Yes, yes. So family separation is still happening, and hopefully we could put an end to it sooner than later.
What age did you start telling stories? You seem really well spoken and experienced with getting your messages across.
Oh, thank you so much. I started telling stories about 6 years ago. So yeah, I'm 48 right now. So I was like 42. Like I say, I used to stutter when I was a kid. I still in high school. I still stuttered a lot, and all through my early adulthood, through my early age as an adult, I used to stutter. But I used to write a lot because I couldn't talk. So I used to write a lot. I used to write a lot of poems. Most of my poems are bad, but I used to write, just write and write and write and write. In high school, I wrote a poem a day when I was a junior. I just make that goal for myself, write a poem each day. And that helped me later in life. Um, I actually wrote a poem where I asked God for forgiveness because I say, for many years I was pissed at you. Well, this is not exactly how the poem goes, but basically, for many years I was pissed at you because I couldn't talk because the words died in my throat without knowing that I was learning how to write by putting all my thoughts in paper. And that later that will bring me, that will come around and help me be the person that I am today. So yeah, so I used to write a lot because I couldn't talk. And when I finally got over my fear of public speaking, all that writing that I did in secret, it has helped me to become a storyteller. I still get very emotional about it. It's like,
I have two questions. Was dressing up as Chompida your best Halloween costume or your favorite one?
I dress up as Chompiras, and then and the next year I dress up as Cantinflas. So those were my best costumes ever. That's the next year I tried to dress up as Papa Smurf, but then when I put the paint on myself, it just kept running out and it didn't work out. So yeah, Chompiras and Cantinflas were the best ever.
Also, what are your traditions for Christmas? Like after you open the presents, did you eat panettone con like hot chocolate?
After I drink after I eat after I open the presents, do what?
Um,
Sorry.
like after you open the presents, you eat panettone con like hot chocolate.
We had like Guatemalan tamales, and my mom usually makes ponche, which is this thing made out of fruit, a bunch of fruit together and very sweet. Yeah. Well, ooh, Guatemalan tamales. Mm. Yes, I'm getting really hungry now.
I was curious what your writing process was or creative process was.
Yeah, I had a before COVID, I had this thing because I used to do a lot of stories for the mod, for the mod shows, and most of you, if some of you don't know, the mod is an organization that does storytelling events, and they used to have 2 or 3 here in Chicago, and I have won like 60 of them, so far, from the very first time I told a story to now. So I made this goal to myself that I wanted to teach somebody how to write a story, so they could go tell it at the mod while I was taking place on the event, and hoping that they could beat me, hoping that the story would be better than mine. I wanted to like, so I was doing this, I was doing workshops for free. I was telling people, if you have a 5 minute, 6 minute story that you want to tell at the mod, bring it. I would tell you my ideas. I would give you ideas, or give you my suggestions of how to improve the story, or how to make it better, or how to tell it better. And they were completely free. I used to have them at the end of the month, once a month, at a small restaurant near Edgewater.
Okay, guys, so it is 1:13. This program ends at 1:15, so I'm gonna go to the outro. So thank you everyone for attending Find Your Voice, and let's give a round of applause for Nestor.